Putin News Now. Wagner's dare to Putin. Deciphering the code. The Wagner mutiny, according to many analyses of recent Russian events, has weakened President Putin, and the rebellion's outcome has been the destruction of the invincibility complex that Putin has carefully cultivated over the past 25 years. When analyzed more closely, the rebellion revealed the deteriorating state of relations between the Wagner Group and the Russian Ministry of Defense over the direction of action in Ukraine. Questions about the mutiny's origins, the Russian government's response, and how all of this will affect the Ukraine crisis have arisen as a result of the events of June 23 and 24, 2023. This article analyzes the 5 most pressing concerns that have arisen in the wake of these events in Russia. Wagner's challenge deciphered. The primary source of friction between the Wagner Group and the Russian military hierarchy is as follows. A number of issues, including the justification for the war in Ukraine and the lack of support for the Wagner Group soldiers from military leadership, have contributed to growing tensions between the two sides. First, the Russian military leadership's utter failure to supply the Wagner Group with arms and ammunition, which resulted in massive fatalities among the group, set the stage for the March for Justice, as Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of the Wagner Group, called it. Prigozhin also claimed that the Russian military had attacked Wagner's base in Ukraine, which did not help matters. The second part of the plan was to have the Wagner Group report directly to the Russian military. Putin approved of the Defense Ministry's mandate that all mercenary organizations operating in Ukraine sign contracts with the government by July 1, 2023. The Wagner Group's leader strongly disagreed with the order because it would incorporate their organization into the Defense Ministry's chain of command. By doing so, the group's respect for Prigozhin would have been diminished. On 23 June 2023, Prigozhin vowed to go all the way to topple the military leadership after he claimed the Defense Ministry was trying to deceive the public, deceive the president, and tell a story that there was some crazy aggression by Ukraine, that, together with the whole NATO bloc, Ukraine was planning to attack us. Notably, Yevgeny Prigozhin never once claimed to depose Putin. Rather, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov were the targets of his ire for allegedly failing the Wagner Group. As a result, it seemed like a point of contention between the Wagner Group and the Defense Ministry, which was trying to safeguard his interests within the Wagner Group. The second involves deciphering the hidden meanings of President Putin's June 24 and June 26 addresses to the people of Russia. In his 2 speeches, the Russian president went from promising to put down the Wagner Group's armed mutiny to praising the majority of the group's soldiers and commanders as loyalist patriots. It's important to note, though, that President Putin didn't once bring up Prigozhin's name. In his first speech, he called the rebellion a fatal mistake, and warned that those responsible would be punished for their conscious choice of the path of betrayal. His second address, however, has an entirely different tone. Further, President Putin restates that steps were taken to avoid spilling blood, and that the Wagner Group soldiers were given the option to either sign a contract with the Defense Ministry or another law enforcement or security agency, return home, or be exiled to Belarus. He reaffirmed his stance, saying that he would keep his word and that everyone is free to decide for themselves which path to take. Putin's 2 addresses sounded like an effort to reassert his authority, steer the story, and highlight his leadership role in containing a crisis that threatened to get out of hand. The third important query follows directly from the previous 2 and concerns the nature of the agreement that Belarus has mediated. We know this deal involved Yevgeny Prigozhin ordering his troops to stop their march to Moscow and return to their base in South Russia, and he also agreed to relocate to Belarus, but details are still sketchy. In response, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that criminal charges against Prigozhin would be dropped upon his departure from the country. He also said that the Wagner troops who participated in the march won't face charges because of their service to Russia. The details of the concessions made to Prigozhin remain classified. Both President Putin's speech on June 26, 2023, and Prigozhin's statement after the agreement made it clear that the priority at the moment is preventing further bloodshed rather than putting down the mutiny. The interesting aspect of this resolution is the part played by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko has become President Putin's most reliable ally in the Ukraine conflict, to the point where he has agreed to let Russia station nuclear weapons in Belarus. Lukashenko's power in Russia has been growing, and this latest intervention only strengthens that power. It's unclear what this latest deal means for Minsk, but it's possible that President Putin's support for his presidency during protests in 2020, when he was accused of tampering with the elections, prompted the Belarusian leader to broker the agreement. The fourth is, after the mutiny, what will happen to the Wagner Group? President Putin's use of Wagner Group to project power abroad has been crucial. They have played a crucial role in stabilizing the Assad regime in Syria while also operating in a number of African countries, most notably Mali, Libya, the Central African Republic, and Sudan. Their greatest achievements, however, have been in Ukraine, where they have been able to achieve territorial gains in areas where Russian forces have been less effective. The Wagner leader estimates that they have lost over 20,000 men in the battle for Bakhmut during their offensive in Ukraine. The Wagner organization's fate is uncertain after the March for Justice. Prigozhin has made it clear that he has no plans to disband the group, and he even implied that President Lukashenko was allowing them to continue operations in Belarus. It is unclear how the mutiny will affect the places where the Wagner Group has been operating outside of Ukraine, despite reports that it is still actively recruiting fighters from various Russian cities. Not to be forgotten are their operations in Africa and West Asia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that the Wagner Group will not be withdrawn from these regions, but it is unclear how the mercenaries already stationed there have responded to the developments in Russia or how they will affect the mercenaries' broader operations outside of Europe. Finally, how will the Wagner mutiny affect the Ukrainian conflict? It is important to remember that the Wagner Group's withdrawal from the front lines was already underway in May 2023, when Russian soldiers began replacing their units. So far, the domestic upheaval has had no discernible effect on their actions in Ukraine, and the intensive missile strikes across various Ukrainian cities indicate that this will continue to be the case. Therefore, a change in their attitude towards the war is highly unlikely in the near future. However, in the medium to long term, there may be a significant tightening of the security apparatus both domestically and internationally to potentially stem similar actions, as the mutiny exposed the security vulnerabilities, as the Wagner Group was able to initiate a mutiny and advance towards Moscow with ease. Conclusion. While the specifics of what transpired remain unclear, it is undeniable that the Wagner Group's March for Justice posed one of the gravest challenges President Putin has faced in his 25 years in office. The deal that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko brokered to calm the situation and force the Wagner Group to withdraw was equally effective. Many have questioned Prigozhin's motives throughout the entire episode due to his extreme back and forth, from his rapid advance towards Moscow to his sudden retreat. Why would you want to undermine Putin's authority? Was it revenge for past slights against Sergei Shoigu and Valery Gerasimov? Or was it just a protest against the planned incorporation of Wagner Group troops into the armed forces? In short, his motivations for acting as he did and for stopping short of Moscow are still shrouded in mystery. Although he assured everyone that he had no intention of challenging President Putin's authority, the chain of events did raise some unsettling concerns about Putin's management. While the full repercussions of the Wagner mutiny have yet to be felt, Prigozhin's concerns about Russia's military actions in Ukraine and who is to blame for the underperformance of the Russian army are likely to reverberate within Russian leadership in the near future. Author biography. Ankita Dutta is a fellow in the Observer Research Foundation's Strategic Studies program.